Homeland Security. And Colonel Wilson's current bill bars DOD funding, but actively encourages Department of Homeland Security funding. And what's actually already happened, South Carolina State Guard picked up $1.5 million AmeriCorps grant to create a 4th battalion. Most of the states are divided into 3 brigades. And South Carolina created a 4th brigade, an AmeriCorps brigade, to search out heavy equipment, because that is one of the problems we have with the Guard, with so much of the equipment being overseas now. That they went to all the contractors in the state and signed up equipment that they could call in an emergency to replace the equipment that they would have had with the Guard, and basically free. And that AmeriCorps grant came from DHS, not from DOD. And there is the real difference. For the first time we have, because the state defense forces truly are Homeland Security. They are not warfighting. They're not designed to be warfighting. There's no reason for them to have any funds for any type. That's properly the role of the federal government and the National Guard, not the states. Now we have a Homeland Security, not a Homeland Defense organization out there, and there could be the funding stream and there could be the grants. This year in Virginia, we've already picked up $50,000 in new two-way communications grants. Last year we picked up, I think it was $180,000 in Homeland Security grants to build 3 mobile communications vans, which are staffed now by Virginia Defense Force communications people, but under the command of the National Guard. And they provide the two-way radio interoperability between the Guard and first responders and hospitals and those type things, that we can cover the whole state, but it's entirely from DHS funding. We now have a different stream that won't interfere with that. Yes?
2 points and I'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
One is, I think you might be further ahead if you approach this in a Guard IMA, in a Guard individual mobilization augmentee perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So these people actually are linked to the Guard, only in a lesser paid status and so forth. That might work better, because the Guard, to my knowledge, doesn't have very many IMAs. I think they're mainly in the reserves and so forth.
It's interesting. That's already happened.
Yeah, one other comment that I'm done. The other one is Katrina.
Yeah.
We always hear, well, the forces and all this stuff. In my view, there was never a lack of available forces for Katrina at all. I mean, the Guard had plenty of people in the 4 states and territories to respond. The only lack was the foresight of what the impact of that hurricane was going to have, and the decisions of leaders to get the right people in the right, to actually get them in place. There's never a lack of people. I mean, I think, I forget the percentages, but the percentage of people that were available that responded was even low. I mean, it was like 15 or 20% or something. So there's no lack of people in the Guard to respond. It's just a matter of somebody saying, we need you, you, and you to show up here to be prepared. And the other part of that is the lack of credible planning. If you've read the National Response Plan, it'll put you to sleep, and it's complicated, and it's not, in no way, shape, or form is it a bumper sticker, here's what we need to do, and here's how we need to do it. It needs a whole lot of work. So from the local to the federal level, people can actually pick it up and say, okay, yeah, I know what I got to do.
Yeah.
So it's planning and leadership, not people. And anyway, that's my point.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate what was said here about the lack of standards, and it's all, there's no correlation between standards, any military standard. They differ greatly from unit to unit. That is a deterrent, I know personally, to recruiting for VDS. Good people would want to show up, take a look at what they see, and turn around and walk out the door, because there is not only no standards of dress and physical fitness, but very few standards of military decorum and general behavior. However, that being said, there is, I think, a very serious role that they can play, and I was going to suggest the very thing that you did, that you can take the VDFs and have either a dotted line or a direct line in time of mobilization, and even prior to mobilization, where they would come under the Guard or be parallel with the Guard and work closely Actually, I could see them under the command structure of the Guard, because when the Guard goes, these guys stay, and they perform the same role. And they should be much closer together, I think, than separate. I don't see them as being a competing force, and actually they could be a supporting force for the Guard in a political constituency, if you look, and that's what it's really all about, and about getting the money that the Guard needs to do their job by expanding the Guard numbers by this dotted or direct line for VDFs under their umbrella. You expand their clout in the state legislatures and on the Hill. In a time when our country really needs cohesion, I see VDFs as being a source of that cohesion, because the more people you can get that are associated with defense, homeland security, and a public mission beyond themselves, the greater, I think, will be the glue that binds us together. And I see that as an ancillary benefit from all of this too. I don't see them as being competition. I would like to see them as being included within the Guard and supportive of the Guard mission and working together on this. And I hope that that's the direction this could take.
Major, I'll take your question, but I do want to respond to one thing you mentioned there, because it's interesting and I hadn't touched on it. We're finding with the Virginia Defense Force that more and more we're having individual members called up to state active duty by the Guard. Some of our specialists that have recently just come out of the National Guard, just retired, are actually being called up one by one and put on with Joint Operations Center for various missions, rather than just units. The last big unit state active duty activation that we had was with Isabel for water distribution in Tidewater. But more and more on a regular basis, it seems like every month we're having a few of the guys called up, or a team like our mobile communications team called up to do missions with the Guard or missions with other state agencies. So that already is occurring. It seems to be one of the most effective ways of using it. What we found around the country in looking at the state defense forces that have been successful, that work very well with their National Guard, that their National Guard is glad they have them instead of it being a burden, is the way it's set up. If you have your adjutant general take his best colonel that he's got that's about to retire anyway and say, hey, instead of retiring, let me give you a star and let's do our state defense force. And you get him and him and him and him because they're about to retire this year too. That's who my state defense force is. It's my guys that are in here at the office with me right now. I know who you are. I know you're trained. I know your qualifications. We're working now. You take it over. And you staff it with trained professional military folks making up the vast bulk of the service. You have to have those physical standards there. I can't say that strongly enough.
No.
And I'll tell you,
the problem right now is the, at least in my state it was,
Right.
I can't speak for any other state, is there was no control by the Guard unit over anything they did in terms of what they trained, how they trained, what, and nothing. All we said was you can use the facilities, but you can't have any equipment or weapons. So with no control over the training, a commander, let's say I was there and my whole unit was going to deploy and I thought these people could perform a function. Well, without really having a handle on how well they're trained and what they're capable of doing, I'm going to hesitate.
that's
to do
exactly,
that.
your comments are exactly what General Reese was saying back in 2003, is I have no idea what the qualifications are. I don't know who they are. I need to know. We need to have standards. I need to know who is, just like the National Guard itself. We have the readiness standards. We need to know what they are for state defense forces. Are they qualified to do this mission? If I need armed personnel to perform military police duty, do they have it? Are they certified? Are they ready to go? And we need to know that. And that's one of the reasons that you've hit it on the head. We have to have standards. The various state defense forces are all over the place in terms of qualifications. Virginia, I think we've hit a very good relationship with our National Guard here, and that we work hand in hand with the Guard. And in fact, our instructors, state defense force instructors, actually instruct National Guard in courses in Virginia, and they do so in Texas as well. That it's that type. But again, it's all over the place. That's why we need the standards.
We
Yes,
have time for about one more question.
yeah,
One
Major, I told
observation.
you I would take yours.
Okay, just two comments. One is that in the early 1990s, when we had one of our National Guard signal units stand down in New York, was my first experience with looking at people who were in, at that time, the State Defense Force, the New York Guard, and I